Well, welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio, Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. A lot on the agenda this week. And we'll start off with one of our favorite people, AOC, who might, in some regard, be the undoing of the Democratic Party. Socialist, super woke. She's the one who said that people that menstruate instead of just saying women. I mean, total mashugana. Basically doubling down about the elections in Virginia and other places, especially Long Island, saying that they didn't really go far enough and you shouldn't hide, or shouldn't run away from wokeism. Obviously completely out of touch. She really had never, just like Bernie, never really had a job. She was a bartender. And Carvel, who is a longtime Democratic strategist, said if the Democratic Party doesn't lose this woke, he almost said shit or bullshit, they're in trouble. Your comments?
Yeah, James Carville is a very smart man. He's worked with the Democrats for literally decades. So he knows what he's talking about. He's also very good at working across the aisle. He married a Republican strategist, and the two of them wrote a fantastic book together. The fact that AOC does not want to take his counsel says more about her ignorance than anything else. It was exceedingly clear that Tuesday's election was against liberalism and against wokeism. And she steps like, oh, well, we don't use the word woke. That's an old person's word.
Yeah, like, and it's indicative of going against racial equality. What a dumbass. Sorry, she's dumber than rocks. And you know something? She had her moment of fame, but she's really, and thank God, she's the one, and the whole Hamas wing is destroying the Democratic Party. Normal
they really are, and it's
the nutcases are the nutcases, but some suburban mom that voted against Trump for obvious reasons is like, okay, this shit is getting out of control.
Loads of Democrats are saying it's out of control, and in fact, there is a group of congressmen who are up for re-election next year, who are moderate Democrats, and they are referring to themselves as normal Democrats, because that is normal for the Democratic Party. The socialist wing is trying to take over, but they're not really Democrats. And if the Democrats don't stop focusing on race, they are going to be eliminated. I mean, you're going to see a red wave possibly bigger than even Obama saw after Obamacare passed.
I'll go out on a limb and say, yes, that's going to happen, because look at the Virginia election and even New Jersey. The Democrat won by razor thin, majority. Long Island, I know there's pockets of conservatism, but more or less a liberal bastion. People have had enough. They see AOC. It's just, and the race baiting, it just gets, and speaking of race baiting, MSNBC, it's just, it's unbelievable. These people have no conscience, no regard. They just throw this crap out. Half of them probably know it's bullshit.
Yeah, no, MSNBC has gone over the deep end. I can't remember Joy's last name, but she went after Winsome Sears, saying Winsome Sears is a white supremacist. For those of you not familiar with the name, this is the first African-American woman voted into the lieutenant governor seat in Virginia. And that's something to remember. They're going, oh, it's all about white supremacy. It's all about white supremacy. Virginia elected the most diverse ticket in its history. An African-American woman for lieutenant governor, a Latino for attorney general. And these are highly qualified people. I mean, Winsome Sears is a former Marine. So if you think she's going to sit back and take this, they're kidding themselves.
And you know something? People like her are the albatross around the Democratic's neck. It's easy to push back on a white person, especially a white Christian person that's straight. But how do you do that against her? It falls short of any logical argument. And increasingly, the Republicans are the party of the regular folk. They were the country club. People like Bill Kristol, who's irrelevant at this point, he was the country club kind of guy. And, National Review, those days are over.
Well, remember, Republicans are really just going back to their roots. I mean, let's look at the Republican Party historically. The Republicans are the ones that fought slavery. First African American Supreme Court justice, appointed by Republicans. First female Supreme Court justice, appointed by Republicans. Republicans have always had that. We lost it a little bit in the 90s, more recently, the early 2000s. But now they're going back to their roots because they realize that's what they need to do.
No doubt, and you have a good point. They lost in the 90s because they were ill prepared for the onslaught. And speaking of white privilege, this is absolutely hysterical. One of the purveyors of the whole woke and basically white privilege shtick, who's made millions, tweeted that about white privilege, and look at white privilege. Almost 50% of white kids claim they're a minority in college applications, and he obviously deleted the tweet. But hey, boy, genius. You may want to think about it before you tweet, because isn't that a little against white privilege? Hello, genius.
It really is. The person we're talking about is Ibram X. Kendi. And Kendi is a professor of humanities at Boston University, the same brilliant university that gave us AOC.
By the way, Boston University, have check, will travel. How does that sound?
Yeah.
You can write the check. But welcome to BU. Unbelievable. A bastion of intellectualism.
Exactly. Kendi has been a big proponent of critical race theory. He's been arguing about white privilege and white supremacy. And then he tweeted about a study that was done that showed that, and I think it was more than 50%, but a large percentage of whites, it's more than a third, lied about their race on college applications, and about half of those people got in. Now, more than three-fourths of these students that lied got in. Now, here's the thing. As soon as he tweeted about this, he came under attack because they said, if whites have to pretend to be minorities, that pretty much kills the theory of white privilege. Obviously, there is more privilege now of being a minority if that's what people have to do to get into college.
Now, okay, let's just cut the shit. If you're even in business, and because of wokeism and corporate wokeism, I hate to say this, I've known this from people that are in the corporate ranks, that you cannot fire. I've seen it a million. You cannot fire, or you'll have very much trouble firing a minority. And talk about employment opportunities. A college graduate minority, it's like, welcome to the country club. Hello.
Well, I mean, it goes even more than that. State Street, which is one of the big financial houses on Wall Street, announced this week that if they want to hire a white male, they have to get special permission from the board of directors.
Yeah, so I think the white
privilege is even if it existed at one point, it's gone. I mean,
But it's a good
they no
cottage
longer.
industry. You have a consulting company. What a great gig in terms of getting a wing to have, consultations on white privilege. This guy probably never worked a day in his life. He's probably worth over $1 million. Oh my God, God bless.
Well,
Only
and
in America.
that's the thing with most diversity programs and diversity consulting is they don't actually produce diversity. What they do is replace one bias with a different bias. And we see that now it's going to courts. Yale University, for example, is being sued over their diversity program because the diversity program was prejudicial against Asian Americans.
Oh, that's been going on for over 10 years. It's a reverse discrimination against Asian Americans. The whole thing is so anti-American. It really is. Okay. Racism, obviously, any normal person would condone. Hello. And by the way, that train.
No. You need to rephrase that. I know you didn't say that right. Nobody condones racism.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
But you just said that any normal person would condone it.
Condone racism, yes.
No, condone racism means you're okay with racism.
Oh, no. It would be anti-racist. Yes. No, whatever. Misspoke. But the point is that train left the station, but they keep on bringing this up. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so moving on, gas prices are going to reach probably $5 a gallon very quickly. And as this happens, Biden is contemplating, or not that he actually will do that, but the people pulling the strings will are considering pulling another pipeline. Unbelievable. It's devoid of any rationale. Even if the pipeline had a minimal effect, it's all about the connotation of supply and demand. It's ridiculous. And again, it's good if you're a Republican because it also home heating oil is going to be at record levels, up over 100%. That's not going to bode well for our president that has lower than a 37% approval rating.
No, it's not going to bode well at all. And it's even more than that because fuel is the cornerstone of economy because trucks have to use fuel to get supplies from one place to another. So if the transportation costs more, the end goods end up costing more. The plants that produce these items have to run on fuel. So it raises the cost of everything that's being made. So it's not just fuel prices that's going up. He is actually fueling inflation across the board on everything that people need. And I heard a great term this morning, and I apologize to the person that came up with this because I don't remember his name, but he referred to this as econocide.
I love that. Or
yes,
Bidenflation is another term that's bantered about.
But yeah, he's literally killing the economy, and he doesn't even realize it.
If you've never worked, he started in the Senate after graduating at the bottom of his class when he was maybe 30. Okay, he's never worked a day in his life. He doesn't know anything about supply and demand. He doesn't know anything about the economy. I'm sure Kamala is another genius of economic theory. So, yeah, they don't understand it. But if you look at what they don't understand, when it hits home to the average person's pocketbook, and you're looking at the most expensive Thanksgiving ever, it's going to fuel, he's already below 37%. It's going to further fuel his demise, which I've never seen a quicker spiral in my entire life.
No, this is an amazing spiral. And I think it's also important to mention, Biden's approval rating is low, but Harris's is at 28%, making her have the lowest approval rating of any vice president in modern history. That means
And that's
she has a lower approval rating than Dick Cheney, than Spiro Agnew, who was forced to resign.
Oh, yeah, but the interesting part of that, Dr. Lopkin, is she's being protected, and so is Joe Lunchpail, by the liberal media. If they actually reported, both their ratings would be at least 10% lower. I mean, you can't get any lower. And the whole gig's up. I mean, people get their news from other venues, because you look at the ratings of CNN and MSNBC, they're below 1 million. You're only talking about the true believers. It's really crazy. And talking about belief and the unbelief. Go ahead.
Well, CNN is absolutely amazing, because they've actually been spending a lot of their airtime attacking Fox. So rather than they're not even covering the news, they're just attacking their competitors now. And of course, it doesn't matter what they say, because nobody's watching.
You know what you mean? So that's the thing. So people are getting information. 1 million people in a country of over 300 million is irrelevant. I mean, 1 million, come on, please, that's ridiculous. People get their news from the net, from blogs, from other places, and I think the word's getting out. I mean, you can't hide it. The international press, when Biden was at the climate summit, I know about the napping, but he also did an impromptu press conference, you can call it, without a teleprompter. If you watch that, and people are in a listening audience, if you watch that, if that's not scary, I don't know what to tell you. He's like, woo! He's like a poster child for dementia. It's crazy. Like, if you see this with your grandfather, send him to a hospital immediately.
And you are seeing a greater influence of the foreign press, because when you go to a search engine and you put in a topic, the foreign press is showing up higher and higher because more people are going there. So the domestic media can't even really defend Biden, because the world media is going, oh, no, this is what's happening.
Exactly. Very interesting. Interesting and alarming. Talking about Biden not being in control. Hello, surprise, surprise. He came off the plane from the climate summit, and he was asked about the $450,000 payment in terms of retribution for illegals. And he said, oh, that's impossible. And then a day later, he goes, well, we owe them that. Obviously indicative that he's not in control. And second of all, if that actually goes through, that is unconscionable. Talking about being out of touch, the average American close to retirement has less than $100,000 in savings, net assets. And then you're talking about giving people 400 and the net assets of these people are like $5. Insanity.
Well, let's clarify this, because there's been a lot of misinformation about this. Okay. The government is not saying we're going to give $450,000 to illegal immigrants. What they are saying is these immigrants are suing the United States. They are being represented by the ACLU of all people. These folks are supposed to be defending the Constitution. That was how they were founded.
Yes,
but
please.
they are suing the United States, and the government is talking about settling the lawsuit. The 450,000 is the settlement number that the ACLU is bandying around. Now, we don't know if the government is actually going to settle for this. It's a very convenient way for them to, well, it's because Trump separated them from their kids. Well, guess what? They came into the country illegally. When you are arrested for a crime, you go to jail. Your kids don't go with you. They are separated from you. So this is the justice system. So we're going to have to see. And right now, it's the Justice Department, not the White House, that's actually negotiating this. And that's why Biden doesn't have any clue what's going on.
Yeah, but if he was a real president, he would.
No, he probably wouldn't, because this is being done under Garland. And we've already seen how incompetent Garland is. So there's a strong possibility that Biden had no clue what was going on, and this took him by surprise, which doesn't bode well. But if the Justice Department actually settles for that much, there is no way a settlement like this, if it's challenged, will survive a Supreme Court appeal.
Oh, let's hope so. And by the way, Garland, he was put up by Obama as a potential Supreme. Sometimes the light cockroaches go in the corner. When he was in the congressional hearings, he came out as a buffoon.
Yes, he did. And, a lot was made about the fact that the Republican Senate refused to give him a hearing when Obama put him up as Supreme Court justice. The fact of the matter is, if he were on the Supreme Court, it would be an abject disaster. He is not qualified for the Supreme Court. He's barely qualified to run the Justice Department. We dodged a bullet by blocking him.
Agreed. So we're moving on to our good friend Adam Schiff with the investigation in terms of the debunked Russia hoax. He built his entire and it really is disturbing, because he brought out that your credibility is off the is gone. But it's not only him. He knew it was fake. They have a lot more information than you and I do. The media, NBC, the whole mainstream media knew this was the biggest bunch of bullshit, but they promoted this lie, and now, unfortunately, it's too late. But now the chickens have come home to roost.
Yeah, we're really seeing, not just Schiff, but the media itself. I mean, let's face it, the media pushed the Russia conspiracy, which had no basis, sat on the Hunter Biden stories, which now turn out to be true. The bias in the media has been so overwhelming. But Adam Schiff was called out on, of all places, The View.
View.
And again, let's be clear, it was not the people on The View that called him out, because they're basically complicit in this as well. It was another guest.
But he thought he was going on The View. He thought he was going on The View for softball questions. He got his ass handed to him.
Yeah,
Unexpected.
Everything Schiff has been saying over the last several years has been shown to be a lie. People have been indicted for this, and the investigation is ongoing. We are going to see so many people wrapped up in this. Now, here's the only question, and it was actually brought up by the special counsel, Durham. He said the big problem that he's facing is that he can uncover all of this, but is a political candidate, remember, Hillary did not hold public office at the time, is a political candidate creating fraudulent accounts against the law, and they haven't figured this out yet. So she may still get away with this, but it's going to be public knowledge what she did, what her campaign did, and how the media was basically complicit in pushing the lie. And this is what I'm referring to as the election fraud that the Democrats did, culminating in 2020, because it wasn't just a matter of fake votes in 2020, which we've seen in the audit in Arizona. 10,000 more absentee ballots were counted than actually went out. So we know there was fraud. But it was a matter of, since 2016, banging the drum on fraudulent charges, of fraudulent impeachment hearings. This was a 5-year campaign, actually, against Donald Trump just to get Democrats back in office.
No question about it. And, the Clintons are a criminal enterprise, and crooked Hillary, sometimes Trump does nail it, is a great name to hang on her. So then we move on to looking at, again, associated with the bad economy, personal debt after years of going down is now at record levels. That is obviously a sign of a weakening economy and people's faith in that, and displaced people as well. And then indicative somewhat of America's, sorry to say, decline. We went to the moon. Kennedy in 1962 said we will go to the moon. So 7 years later, without a computer, with basically you're looking at slide rules.
They did have computers.
Well, but the computing capabilities was that of less than a smartphone, okay?
Yes.
And they went to the moon, or basically a home-held calculator. So fast forward 50 years later, the moon landing, which was supposed to be like 2025, has now been put on hold, which begs the question, is NASA friggin' irrelevant? And in going further on that, their moon equipment or apparel is $1 billion a copy. My suggestion to them would be to go to a museum, get the ones that are 50 years old, dust them off, clean them up, and you're kind of good to go. A complete a department that's completely lost its way. They do the same shit over and over. Let's go to the Mars. Okay, do something different. Okay, how does that grab you?
Well, it's not even a matter of doing something different. It's about taking the next steps. I mean, realistically, we should have a base on the moon by now. And the problem is NASA is completely at the will of whoever's in charge. And every Democrat for decades has cut back on them. And the Republicans have said, "Oh yes, we need to expand," but of course, as soon as the Democratic administration comes in, they cut more. So now, what you really have is the American space industry has been privatized. SpaceX will get to the moon, back to the moon, before NASA will.
Okay, let me interject.
I predict they'll land somebody on Mars before NASA will.
Okay, so when that happens, is that the end of NASA? I mean, if SpaceX goes to the moon before NASA, what is the point?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's the end of NASA, or maybe it's the fire that they need to get their asses back into gear. The question is, where is the funding going to come from? If private industry is going to provide the funding for space exploration, the government will cut back. And if the government continues to cut back, NASA's capabilities get cut back. I mean, that's simply what it is. It's whichever way the political winds blow. NASA is not the driver of space exploration. They're actually, at this point, a victim of administrations.
But I think it's when you talk about the Democrats versus Republicans, that is really sheds light on where the Democratic mind, the current Democratic mind is. They're worried more on wokeism and bullshit and, racist, whatever, justifications. They're not really into American exceptionalism. That to them is probably wrapped up in racial exploitation.
Right.
I mean, they're so twisted at this point. Nothing is beyond consideration.
And, I should really restate that, because it's not really Democrat versus Republican. It's liberals versus moderates and conservatives, because the liberals don't even want SpaceX and Virgin Galactic going up. They're trying to stop the private spacecraft going, oh, these add too much to climate change. We can't allow it.
And then they go to the climate conference with Mr. Kerry, a boy genius, how he got into Yale. That is something for a complete shit.
Hundreds of private jets, multiple hundreds of limousines and SUVs, all converging on Glasgow. The carbon footprint of this climate conference is more than some countries.
Yeah, no, it was all show. Nothing's going to happen. And it's in the biggest polluters, India and China in particular, didn't show up. They're increasing coal. America's not the problem. Of course, we can do better. I get it. But we've done quite a good job in reducing our emissions. It's not so. It's the whole thing about blame America first. Trump had America first. Biden has America last policy. It's not us. It's putting if we stopped everything, China and India would still be real problems and a real consideration.
And thanks to the Biden administration, we have no leverage to put on China. China does not consider us a threat, does not consider us at all. In fact, right now, China is undergoing war games where they're shooting at massive replicas of our ships.
Yeah, our aircraft carriers, listen, they look at our situation and they think a suicide, as Buchanan wrote in his book 10 years ago, suicide of a superpower. They look at, Trump had a lot of problems. We could go on all day about that. But then leave it to America to shoot themselves in the foot and elect numbnuts. They don't take them seriously. It's only a matter of time before they militarily or just by brute force take over Taiwan. They're already telegraphing it, and the Democratic Party is more interested in wokeism, and you have Miley Cyrus, the general, having woke training instead of how to kill people. They're laughing at us, and that's a slap in our face. Totally obvious what they're doing, but they're saying you guys are irrelevant, and I don't think I would question our ability to do anything about it.
Well, that's the thing. The biggest problem isn't that they think we're irrelevant. The biggest problem is they may be right.
They are right. Yeah, I mean, are you kidding me? With Nancy Pelosi in charge and the woke generals, if we landed on Normandy, they'd have, we need an LBGQ boat, landing craft. How much diversity do we? We'd be incapable. It would take years. It's like the moon landing that's going on. We're incapable of doing things. We are getting in our way. China, Russia know it, and they're laughing. Kind of to wrap up, Aaron Rodgers, the whole COVID thing. He shouldn't have lied. I don't condone that in any way. But certainly I like his pushback, unlike the ex-quarterback of New Orleans, who was for standing for attention at the national anthem, then went against it. But Aaron Rodgers, I give him credit. He's like, I'm pushing back on the woke. I know what's good for my body. He never should have lied about if he got vaccinated or not. But
again, he never lied about that. He never said he was vaccinated. He said he was receiving treatments, which he was. The problem is, and what most of the mainstream media refuse to cover, is the fact that Aaron Rodgers is allergic to the way the current vaccines were developed. And his doctors told him point blank, there are more health risks to you being vaccinated than there are taking these alternative therapies or catching COVID. So he never said he was vaccinated. And he said often, the way he phrased it, might have led people to believe it, but had anybody actually asked him about it, he would have clarified that no, he was not vaccinated.
But isn't the real lesson to be learned is that when you stand strong against wokeism, you win. He didn't get dumped by Liberty Mutual. I think a lot of people are gonna appreciate him more, not less. If he kowtowed like a little bitch, then yeah, it'd be just another long annals of people that kowtowed to wokeism. Am I not correct?
You are correct. And I think you're really seeing the beginning of the end of cancel culture, because you have Aaron Rodgers that stood up to it. You have Dave Chappelle that stood up to it. Bill Maher has been standing up to wokeism. That blows my mind. Jon Stewart has been standing up to it. So you're getting more and more, liberals even saying enough is enough. We said earlier, James Carville came out against it. Cancel culture does not have the strength that it used to, because people have gone, all right, you know what? This is just fascist. If you don't agree with somebody, debate them. You can't just say, oh, you're not allowed to say that, because we have freedom of speech in this country.
Agreed. And to finish up, the word of the day is condemn, condone. Mr. Sherman will get it right next time. Hello, boy genius. But yeah, thank you for your help on that one. But a great show, and our listeners can many avenues they can get us, right?
You can find Carnivore Bites as well as the rest of the Xvadio podcast network at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts.
Thank you, Dr. Lotkin, and thank our listeners.
We'll see you next week.